for older risk people.
Yep.
And one more step to get your show up here, John. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
One more step to get your show up here, John. I'm sorry. Oh,
That's
okay.
Must have some lag there.
It's good to see you, John.
Good to see everybody.
Your honor, Sir John Ambassador.
All right, John.
Okay.
This should be you.
You ready?
You're up.
Okay. First, I'd like to thank everybody for joining the group tonight. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yep. There's some feedback going on, I think. So.
Okay.
It could be through Jeff's mic. There you go, Jeff.
There we go.
Okay. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. I saw that there was a group of new people that first timers that were joining in. I don't know if they are actually on the line or not, because there's more that signed up than are on currently. I know Elaine Schaefer is with the Greenways is on board. Mika Patterson is also on, and Sarah Crothers is also on. So that almost half the staff of the Greenways Association just joined us this evening. So I'd like to thank them for joining in. And they know a whole heck of a lot more about the operation than I do. So they're more than welcome to answer any questions that come up, or correct me if I'm wrong when I say something that might be a little bit off from what the facts are. So we'll get started. Jeff, if you want to. All I'm seeing is myself, Jeff. I'm seeing Megan.
We see the screen.
Yeah, we see the screen. Everything looks good.
I can see your screen.
Hard for you to narrate if you can't see it.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. I don't have it memorized. Hang on a second.
It's a skyline view of Philadelphia.
Okay.
A beautiful picture.
Yeah, it is a beautiful picture. I'm starting off. Let me.
Maybe you could turn your Facebook on, your Facebook feed on your phone.
Yeah, I was going to pull up the presentation. Okay, just 10 more seconds. Okay, so Jeff, what are we looking at? Are we looking at the first slide? Okay, there you go. Are we all ready? Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Somehow Jeff got it up on. I was looking at one computer and now it's up on my iPad, so that's fine. So this is, of course, we all see this is Philadelphia, and the Schuylkill is running through all this. And I'm going to step back away from this just for a second, because I want to start off by saying this is not where I grew up. I grew up west of Reading, east of Hershey, in a little town called Lebanon, more famous for its bologna. And I grew up there, went to high school there, decided to go off into college, and I went to college up in central Pennsylvania near Penn State. The school is called Lock Haven State College at the time. When I was in Lebanon growing up with my family, we started out by camping in a tent that I had gotten off of old 4-man canvas tent that I had saved up for, and we started out camping in that, and we went in and we had a trailer. My parents got a trailer shortly thereafter, and whenever we'd have an adventure, we'd go somewhere in the tent, or we'd go somewhere in in the trailer. We'd go up and down the East Coast. We'd go to Smoky Mountains, or we'd go up into Maine, and we'd spend weeks vacationing together away from home. And that was my first real experience with the outdoors, and was through my family, of course, and the camping experiences that we had. As I was in college, I was there to get my secondary ed teaching degree, and I got it in Earth and Space Science. And I came down to the Pottstown area to student teach in Owen J. Roberts School District, and that's how I became familiar with the area. And I ended up moving down here in 1976. And that was a great distress to my mother. So if we go to the next slide, Jeff. And the reason why it was a great distress to my mother, moving from Lebanon, Pennsylvania, which is only about an hour from here, down to Pottstown, is because, in my mother's words, everybody knows that when you move east of Reading, Pennsylvania, you're living in downtown Philadelphia. So my being the good son that I was, I believed every word that my mother said, and my first experience with the region was through work and through later on through marriage and changing careers from teaching, getting into business. But my exposure to the region, my exposure to the watershed was really through roads. I still had that image in my mind that when I was going to have an adventure or take a vacation, I would do that by going somewhere. I would get in a car, I'd get in a plane, I'd go somewhere to have an adventure, and it'd take an awful lot of planning to do all of those kinds of things. And the exposure that I had with the region, or with the river specifically, or with the Greenways, was through the vision that I saw through my windshield, because my experience is going to be traveling back and forth to work, or traveling back and forth to the airport. I did towards the end of my career, I did an awful lot of travel. So I was always on the roads, or when I was going somewhere, I was going somewhere for work, and I was flying to different regions, nationally and internationally. So I had the image of the Schuylkill was just slight views of the Schuylkill River. It was views of the river from the roads, views of the river from the bridges that crossed it, but never really exposed to the river itself. And so I had this image in my mind that when I wanted to vacation, I could do one of two things. I could either go abroad, get in a car, take a plane, fly somewhere to have an adventure, or I could relax at my home, which was sort of like my sanctuary, a little piece of Lebanon, Pennsylvania, that was east of Reading in downtown Philadelphia. Next slide, Jeff. So this is my yard, and that's sort of a juxtaposition from all the traffic and the macadam and the steel and the high rises and so on that my mom had always envisioned was east of Reading. This is where we lived, and this is since the late 80s, and we would still spend an awful lot of time in this area, and then if we weren't spending it here, we were traveling somewhere. But I always had this, next slide, Jeff. So I always had this vision of, if I'm going to have an adventure, I'm going to be going somewhere. And lately, I've been going to a variety of locations. This is one of the trips that I took this past year, is to the Canyonlands in Utah. But the adventure took planning. It took some time, and it took, of course, a little bit of expense to get yourself out there and to have that experience in August. Don't ever go in August, by the way. It's hotter than blazes. Next slide, Jeff. And here's a trip, two different trips that we had taken this past year also. One to the Green River in Utah, which was a lovely trip. And then at the end of January, which seems a lifetime ago, but it's only about 10 weeks ago, 12 weeks ago, we went to the Everglades, and we had a week in the Everglades and the Keys on an adventure. But again, the idea was that if I ever had to have an adventure, I had to go somewhere to make that happen. Next slide, Jeff. But always in the back of my mind when I was working, well, we always got the Pottstown, the local newspaper. And every year there was this, and oh, by the way, I've never been a volunteer on and off through the church, through our church. I have a volunteer here and there and do different things, but never a persistent volunteering or a plan of volunteering or a schedule of volunteering. It was just if they needed something in a kitchen for one day or cleaning up around the church, doing things like that, but never an active volunteering program that I was involved in. But I was always intrigued by the Schuylkill Sojourn. I never saw it, but I just saw this. I just saw it through the eyes of the writers for the newspapers. As every year it would gain more and more visibility as it came down through the Schuylkill River. And I always thought, boy, someday I really would like to take a trip on the Schuylkill River, because I didn't have any exposure to the Schuylkill River. I've never been to the Schuylkill River. I've lived in southeastern Pennsylvania. I lived in northern Chester County since 1998. Since 1988. I lived in southeastern Pennsylvania since 1976, and I've never been to the Schuylkill River until May of 2015. And the reason why I said May of 2015 is because I retired in May of 2015. And the first thing that I did was I had planned my retirement for a few weeks. It was a very short notice that I had given the company. And I registered to go on a Schuylkill Sojourn. And so I retired in the middle of May, and about 3 weeks later, I was on my very first Schuylkill River Sojourn. Okay, Jeff, next slide. So that was my exposure to the river, was always from a car window. I'd never been to the river up until about 2 weeks prior. I had borrowed a friend's 12-foot LL Bean kayak with a purple kayak with pink paddles. And I was about to enter into the river for the very first time. And I did it at Ganchahani about a week before. And I spent about an hour on the river just practicing in the kayak for the very first time. And then off we went. And my first time I ever touched the Schuylkill River was May of 2015, just a few short weeks before the Schuylkill River Sojourn. Next slide, Jeff. And the Schuylkill River Sojourn in 2015, to me, was an eye-opener. It was it completely changed my outlook on vacationing, on adventures, that you could do it, and you could do it within 5 minutes of your house. You didn't have to plan for weeks or for years to get a schedule together and find time off. You could do it at a spur of the moment, because when I got on the river, it was like a completely different world. And I quickly became exposed to three. I took away from the experience of the Schuylkill River Sojourn. I took away three key factors. Number one was the community of the kayak of the sojourners. That middle picture, the top middle picture, the blue kayak, the lady in the red shirt. Some of you might know her. That's Nora. And on a Friday night up at Schuylkill Haven, I went up there by myself with my gear, thinking I had all my stuff, and I had way too much stuff. But I was walking around by myself because I didn't know anybody, anything. I had no idea about the Schuylkill River Greenways Association. I didn't know that they were the sponsors of the Sojourn. I just knew that the Sojourn was going on, and I had to register through the Greenways so that I could become one of the Sojourners. And so I was walking around, just sort of enjoying the people from afar. And Nora waved me over and said, "Come on, join us." And I became part of the community with that wave. And that week of community of 100 and some people that we came on and off the river for those 7 days was just an amazing event to me for the community, and how everybody embraced everybody, and how there were no cliques. There was just a group of people enjoying the outdoors in southeastern Pennsylvania, which, if my mother were still alive, I'd tell her that not everything looks like Center City, Philadelphia, east of Reading, Pennsylvania. The second thing that I took away from that was the environment. We saw bald eagles. We saw lots of wild birds. We had rapids, we had dam portages, we had all sorts of events that took place during the day. And it was simply stunning to me to realize that I was within, in some cases, just a few yards of Route 422 or the Schuylkill Expressway, and I was in a completely different world. It was truly an adventure taking place in southeastern Pennsylvania that you didn't have to travel great distances for. And I was just enthralled by that idea that there was adventure right outside my back door. And the third thing that I experienced was the Schuylkill River Greenways Association. They had put on an impeccable sojourn. They were able to manage hundreds of people during that week. Usually 100 to 120 people a day. Many, about 70 people would do the trip at one for the whole week, but others would come and go from a one day event to a few days. So I was hooked. I was hooked for the community. I was hooked for the adventure and the environment that was so close to the concrete and steel and buildings and the nature. And I was also hooked on the Greenways, because the Greenways was able to put together such a fine example of community and engagement around the river and around the watershed, and bring people to appreciate the joys of what could be had in our own backyard. Next slide, Jeff. So I was hooked. And on another name I'll bring out is Sydney. And Sydney it happens to be a trail ambassador, and I had no idea what that was, but I happened to sit down next to her at Pottstown, which is the fourth night, Tuesday night dinner. And she explained to me a little bit about the Greenways. That's the first time I really got a feel for what the Greenways was and what it was all about, other than what the announcements would be had on a daily basis. And she told me how she was engaged in the Greenways. Besides just enjoying the sojourn on an annual basis, she was engaged through this program called the Trail Ambassador Program. Next slide, Jeff. if you want to get a sense of if you've not been on the Sojourn, or if you have been on a Sojourn and you want to remember what it was like to be the first time that you joined the Sojourn, I would encourage everyone to go to this link. Matt Adventures Company, that's Matt Stan. Matt Stan does was one of the lead guide for the Sojourn. And last year or a year, I guess it was last year, he had a first time guide named Natalie. And Natalie wrote up what it was like to be a guide for the Sojourn. And in concert with that, what it was like to be a first time person joining the Sojourn. And I think her article, it's a short article, but I think it truly captured the experience and the excitement of what it's like to be part of the Greenways community. Next slide, please. And that's all thanks to the Schuylkill River Greenways Association. They're just an outstanding organization, and the more I got to know about them through that first Sojourn in 2015, the more I was intrigued by them. And I made a pledge to myself, and I think to Sydney that night, that first Tuesday night in the Sojourn, that I would definitely look into becoming a trail ambassador. Next slide. And the Greenways really lives up to their mission statement, and that is that they try to serve as a catalyst for getting the communities engaged, getting economic development around the river, and fostering stewardship for the watershed and its heritage. We live in an amazing spot. The Schuylkill River was key to the Industrial Revolution. It was key to the environmental revolution. It was the first river in North America that was, it was a big cleanup program put in place back in the 1940s, I think. Maybe, I think it was the 40s, and it was the first time ever. And now it's going through a revolution of engagement again, where the river is becoming more than just an item that flows through communities. Communities want to be near the river. They want to be part of the river. They want the river to be part of them. And next to the river is the Schuylkill River Trail. And the Greenways' #1 priority is for the promotion, and the creation of a continuous trail from Schuylkill County all the way down to Philadelphia. And we have about half of that completed right now, and we're continuing to build every year to extend the trails and close up the gaps that do exist. Next slide, please. So I signed up to become a volunteer, and it's very easy to become a volunteer. And I'd like to encourage everybody to spend some time, and I have it listed here at the end of the slide presentation, some of the contact information that you can use. But there is a volunteering section on the website, which is schuylkillriver.org. If you go there, if you go to the schuylkillriver.org, there's a volunteer section, and there's all sorts of ways to volunteer. And we'll start out by talking briefly about the first, the volunteering as a trail ambassador. It's a short form, you fill it out. There's an interview process that at the time, Sarah Crothers would do the interview process with you in face-to-face. I think now it'll probably be video streamed until things settle over Zoom. And then there's also a background check which you can do online. And during that interview process, you're given the theme about what the trail ambassador is meant to be. And you're really the eyes, ears, and voice for the Schuylkill River Greenways Association and for the trail. You're there to guide people, answer their questions, hand out maps. If someone needs some help, if you can offer them some help, you're given tools to do that, like a small medical kit. Not that you're going to become an EMT, but you can hand out, Band-Aids and things like that to help the individuals if they have a need. As you become more and more familiar with the trail, you can guide them to the nice website, which there's an interactive trail map. That trail map, you can put in your starting trailhead and your finishing trailhead, and you can see all the amenities that are nearby. So you can help them find bathrooms or food services from at each location that you're traveling to, and other distances that you'll be traveling, and the sites that you might see along the way. The next slide, please. So you're really there to be like I said, the eyes, ears, and the voice for the trail. You're not a policeman. You're not there to corral anybody. If you see them doing something wrong, you're there to show a presence. That's why they hand out some T-shirts, trail bike shirts, so that the people that are on the trail know that there are people out on the trail that are stewards for the trail. There's a level of comfort and a level of safety that comes in mind just from the mass, from the group that's out on the trail at any time of the day, any day of the week. And I brought my bike helmet because I was going to wear my bike helmet, but I only realized that I shouldn't do that because the trail is more than a biking trail. You can bike the trail and be a trail ambassador. You can run in the trail, which I've been doing a lot lately. I apologize, Sarah, except for March. Except for April, I wasn't on the trail at all this month because of COVID-19. But you can bike it, you can walk it, you can run it, you can sit on it. There's benches along the way, and you can be there in all sorts of ways and all sorts of capacities, and show a presence there for the people that are on the trail. And I can tell you that the trail is used all the time. My favorite time to go on a trail is early in the morning, usually before 7 o'clock, right at dawn, and I'm never there alone. And the trail that I'm usually on is between Pottstown and Birdsboro. That's my stretch of the trail because it is literally in my backyard. About a mile and a half from the Merlatten Village trailhead. And then we're also there to find problems with the trail. This is a tree that fell across, this image of a tree that fell across the trail, and it is definitely a problem. The Greenways Association is made up of, I was trying to count, Sarah, 7 full-time people.
Our staff, I think our staff is about 9 now.
Nine people,
Mm-hmm.
9 people, and there's when it's done, there's going to be 120 miles of about 120 miles of trail, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. That's a lot of miles. If you divide 9 into 120, that's 14 miles, 15 miles per person. If they would be responsible for each of that. So the trail ambassadors are also out there to find problem areas and report them back using a form. Report them back to the headquarters, which is located in Pottstown at Riverfront Park, so that they can send out the appropriate person, depending on what the issue is. If it's a tree down, they have a tree service person that goes out and takes care of the trail, clears the trail, and keeps the trail open for everybody. So the trail ambassador is truly the eyes and extends the capability and the programming capability for the Greenways Association, because it runs on a very small but very dedicated staff of people that care so much about the trail and the watershed itself. Next slide, please. So there's not many requirements that are out there. You have to be over 18, and in 2015, I was definitely over 18 years old, so I met that goal. You have to commit to a minimum of 8 hours a month from April through October. That's your pledge to the Greenways, that you'll dedicate that amount of time on the trail. Again, by riding your bike, by walking your dog, by sitting on a bench, by running on the trail. There's no hour policeman out there, though. So if a month or 2 months or something comes up where you're traveling, you're not going to get somebody knocking at your door after dark and writing you up because you missed your 8 hours for the month of April. At least that no one's done that to me this today yet, and it's because I had recorded 0 hours on the trail in the month of April, I think.
It's the trail ambassadors are looked at holistically, not monthly.
Yeah. And
I do annual reviews, John.
And you can record your hours, not just April through October, but you can also record hours through all year round. And I do. There's not a month that doesn't go by in the winter months that I'm not on the trail several times a week under normal circumstances. I hit the trail usually at More Latin Village trailhead, and I'm on the trail 2 to 3 times a week typically. And the person that coordinates all of this is Sarah Crothers, and she's on the call tonight. Next slide, Jeff. But through the trail and through the that first sojourn that I went on, I met, like I said, some amazing groups. I met the Greenways. I met Matt Stan and the Bad Adventure Company, and I've enjoyed his adventures since. I've met Doug Chapman and Take It Outdoors Adventure, and I've enjoyed many of the trips that we were talking about on some of these Zoom meetings that we've had. It's like the one we just had on the Lake Michigan trip. I was on that trip, and one coming up, Mallows Bay trip, and Switzerland trip. They were all trips that I had taken because I've got the opportunity to meet those two outstanding groups of adventurers, and albeit trips that are away from the Schuylkill River, there's an awful lot that we do with Take It Outdoors and on the trail and on the water and on the Schuylkill River Trail and on the Schuylkill River itself, that we've met an awful lot of nice people in activities like Friday night bike rides and Saturday bike rides and so on. And again, when we see trees that are down, we report them back to Greenways, and usually it's not unusual for within 24 hours those trees are taken care of and cleared away, unless it's a severe storm, and then there's lots of trees down, and it might take a few days to get them cleared out. But they're keenly aware, and they report it out, and the company works on it right away to clear the trees away from the trail. And it's the volunteers that help keep the trail open for the public, help keep the trail open for the community to use the trail. And now more than ever, we are recording. We have counters on the trail now in different locations, and the trail usage is up hundreds of % because people want to be out. and people want to be enjoying nature. And I don't ever want to forget that experience that I had on a sojourn when I realized that there was real adventure and real communing with nature 5 minutes away from my back door. And I believe people truly appreciate what the trail means to them, and the stewardship that the Greenways gives to the watershed is a key component as to why people enjoy the trails so much, and the nature that comes with that trail. I've seen all sorts of wildlife on the trail. Most of it animals. Every once in a while, there's a few humans that are a little bit of wildlife. That just adds a little bit of spice to the events. Next slide, Jeff. This is the sort of the upper reaches. If you, I said I typically am between Birdsboro and Pottstown, but this is the Auburn section, which goes. If you have not ridden from Hamburg to the Auburn Dam area, you're missing an absolutely gorgeous 9-mile one-way stretch. The train station that you see there, that's Port Clinton, and the old crummy looking bridge there is the Auburn Bridge, which is not under contract yet, but probably before the end of the year will be redecked. It's very close to being put out for bid for getting that redecked. That will extend the trail over the river, and then I'm not quite sure. There's work to be done on the other side to continue it going upstream, but there's active work on several bridges that's going on, even with the pandemic that's occurring. There is activity that should be taking place this year on I think at least 3 bridges: Monocacy Crossing, the Auburn Bridge. There's one more and I can't remember which one that is. Next slide, Jeff. And this is in downtown Pottstown. Again, nature right in the back door of the town of Pottstown, and also the home of Schuylkill River Greenways in one of the community college's buildings, right along the rivers. The Pottstown's to the left, the river's to the right. Behind us is Route 100. And just across the river is Route 422, and all that commercial and industrial component. There's a little slice of heaven right in the corner of Pottstown. Next slide, Jeff. And you get once you become an ambassador, you get T-shirts emblazoned with trail ambassadors. You get a first aid kit. You get a bag. Or a shoulder bag, a backpack type bag, or a handlebar bag. You get a fleece that I love my fleece that I have. It's a fleece vest. You can also get them with long sleeves. You get a riding jersey, and you get supplied with literature for able to hand out to different individuals that ask for help on the trail. And what's so rewarding is being an ambassador. Probably the most frequent word I hear on the trail is thank you. Even if I don't do anything, how nice is that? When someone says thank you when you're on the trail. Of course, you answer questions and you help people with maybe with a flat tire or with some directions. But many times they just see the Schuylkill River Trail Ambassador logo on your bag or on your shirt. And they say thanks because they know that what they're appreciating is to a large part being accomplished because the Greenways has a wonderful group of about 120 trail ambassadors that are out there every day, or as often as they can, helping to keep the trail safe, helping to keep the trail open and making sure that if there are things that need to be fixed, get called back into the main office. And so thank you for I've got many thanks just because they saw that I was a trail ambassador. I was just riding by and people say thank you. That's not to me, but that's a thank you back to the Greenways and all the good work that they do around the trail. Next slide, please. And this is just some of my stretches of the trail. There's my fleece, by the way, that I'm in the back of the group. That stream shot is Manatoni Creek from Riverfront Park, from the steel bridge across the Manatoni Creek, right next to High Street. Next slide, Jeff. And this is Keystone Boulevard, which is an extension of Industrial Highway on your right, and the left is between Monocacy Crossing and my favorite part of the trail between Birchboro and Pottstown. Next slide, Jeff. It's the Douglasville Bridge. The Douglasville Bridge is a beautiful bridge which crosses the river and goes from the north side of the river to the south side of the river. And you have beautiful views from above the water, and you have beautiful views up and down the Schuylkill River. And every time I ride across it, it reminds me of the Schuylkill, all the sojourns I've been on since 2015. Next slide. This is a view of that bridge in a very low water level from the river level, beach shot looking north or west up the river. Next slide, please. And this is Pottstown Riverfront Park, which is a nice starting point. Good facilities. There's porta potties. There's restaurants all up and down Pottstown Main Street now, which is a great thing that I see happening as Pottstown is being rejuvenated, and it's a great starting point. Safe access to the trail. Next slide, please. But not only did I get involved in becoming a trail ambassador, but the Greenways has pulled me in to volunteer in a variety of different ways. And the more I've gotten involved with the Greenways, the more I've wanted to get involved with the Greenways. They didn't pull me in kicking and screaming and yelling and fighting it all the way. It's almost like they showed me the door and they opened it for me, and I would gladly walk through. So there are all sorts of ways to volunteer now, and it's an exciting time for volunteering because we have a big initiative on getting more and more volunteers involved in the Greenways for a variety of reasons. Sarah mentioned that we have a staff of 9. And the programming is broad, and we'll go over that here in a second. And the only way to expand the programming and to continue to provide the excellent programming that the Greenways does is to expand its volunteer force, because the staffing can't expand at the rate it needs to expand to provide all the programming that they are coming up with without the aid of volunteers. So we put a big push on this year to include volunteers in every aspect of the Greenways activities that are going on. Next slide, Jeff. So these are just some of the events that take place in the Greenways. And probably the most famous volunteer-supported activity to date, I would have to, in my opinion, it's right in the middle. It's a ride. I would say it's a ride for the river. I think Mika's on the call, but I think we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 75 volunteers that are needed, absolutely needed, to support the Ride for the River, which goes in the Schuylkill River Trail from Sly Fox Brewery up to Reading, and then it turns around and comes all the way back again. That's about a 40-mile ride, and there's a 18-mile ride that goes to Birdsboro, to Union Township Park, and turns around and comes back. And it takes a small army of volunteers to make that a success, because every crossing has volunteers. Every major crossing has volunteers on it. All the 2 rest stops have volunteers on it. The starting point has volunteers on it, and it's been such a big success for the riders. But it's also been a great success for getting people involved in the Greenways, because I will promise you, the more, if you ever decide to become a volunteer, it's the rewards. To me, the personal rewards are unlimited for what you get back from your volunteering with the Greenways Association. Next slide, Jeff. So we've been talking about Trail Ambassador because that's how I became aware of the Greenways through the Schuylkill River Sojourn. I became a volunteer through the Trail Ambassador program, but there's also Trail Keepers. Trail Keepers are folks that work with the company that keeps the trees clear of the trail, grades the trail, things like that. You can be a trail keeper, and they get together several times a year and do cleanups, and sections of the trail get cleaned up, pushed back, raked over, and trail ambassadors can be involved in that also. Then there's special events like the Ride for the River that I just mentioned. We had the Schuylkill River Sojourn, which has been postponed now to a later date. But for the first time ever, we put together a list of how volunteers could help for the Sojourn to make it a better experience for the volunteers, for the sojourners. And we've come up with about almost 100 different unique volunteering opportunities associated just with the Sojourn. And even though it's been postponed, we're excited about getting volunteers involved in all of that. There's environmental education, which Sarah is the director of the environmental education for the Greenways, and she's expanding her programming. And there's volunteering opportunities there. There's office support, stuffing envelopes. We've done that several times this year, and communications, working with Mika Patterson and getting the word out through social media. There's a water quality program that will be getting underway. One of the things that the Schuylkill River is known for, I believe, not only the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland, but I think the Schuylkill River had caught fire at one point. And it's hard to shake the image of an industrial river running through an industrial towns, and that it's safe to be in. But people are swimming in the river now. We're kayaking in the river. People are fishing in the river. People are tubing in the river. And what they want to know all the time is the quality of the water. And there's a water quality program that's going on where you can help monitor the water quality at certain locations up and down the river, and you can volunteer for that. And then Adopt a Trail and Sponsor a Trail are more for corporate sponsors or small business sponsors, where they'll be responsible for sections of the trail. And all of this can be signed up online too, like the Schuylkill River for the Trail Ambassadors. There's a Trail Ambassador volunteering site. And the form that gets you launched is on the SchuylkillRiver.org website. But there's also a volunteering section for all of these different opportunities like trail keepers and special events and environmental education and office support communications, where you can click off one or all or some of these opportunities, and you can become a volunteer, and you can get notified via the newsletter or via special email blast of a volunteering opportunity that crops up in the next couple of days, in the next couple of months, to keep in mind that you can volunteer in a variety of ways for the Greenways. So even if you're not you don't feel like you want to volunteer in one way, there's all sorts of ways that you can get involved with this wonderful organization through helping them out in all sorts of ways. And you might just have the right skill set or the right talent to share that that you could definitely add benefit to the Greenways and be a resource for the Greenways to be able to not only support their existing programs, but to expand their programs and be able to offer more and more and more opportunities to the community in the watershed of the Schuylkill River. Next slide, Jeff. Here's one group of volunteers, and I'm stuck on the number 75, but I think Mika, this is the trail painting in Schuylkill River Riverfront Park, and I believe the day that they called for the volunteers to come out and help paint this, it took a couple of days, I'm pretty sure, but there was somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 to 80 volunteers that helped complete this mural that's on the trail.
That was a lot of fun to actually help paint that mural too.
Yeah, and without the volunteers, it'd still be unfinished. So the volunteers play a key role in the success of the Greenways. Next slide, please. And then this is just two other examples of ways that you can get involved in volunteering. There's a pollinator garden in the lower right, and then up in the upper left is the Pedal and Paddle, which is put on by Take It Outdoors Adventure Group. We'll be looking to get volunteers involved in that as well. Next slide, please. So, but in these times of the pandemic, there's, I think, 30 signs up and down the Schuylkill River Trail trying to advise people to enjoy the trail, but need to stay safe. And we want you to continue to be out there enjoying the trail, but there are safety concerns for you and for the people that you might pass. And these are signs that are out there to please continue to enjoy the trail. Please continue to keep it clean and safe. There's more crowds on the trail. It's as crowded as it's ever been. There's more and more people enjoying the trail, which we just truly love to see. But usually with more people also comes more litter. And we want to make sure that people are advised that leave no trace is a great theme for that. So if you see these signs, it doesn't mean you can't be on the trail. Just take some safety precautions and stay safe and stay healthy. And next slide, Jeff. And for my wife and me, be out there and enjoy yourself. And if you think about you wanting to volunteer, please come to one of these websites or social media sites and join in. Next slide, Jeff. Oops, I'm sorry. Lorraine, you can't say anything.
I won't.
But this is nature at its best. I was a slide ahead of myself. And can anybody, this is nature along the trail. I'll tell you that. But do you know why I like, what's so unique about this picture? Can anybody see what's?
Raindrops.
It's
I do this a lot too on the trail, John.
What's that?
I said I do this a lot too. Yeah.
I'm just intrigued by it. And
Lorraine's puddle pictures.
These are Lorraine's puddle pictures. They're pictures taken of puddles.
Oh, so you do it, Lorraine. I do the same thing. They're beautiful. That's so cool.
It's just great stuff, and I just think it's neat, and it just shows how you can enjoy nature in so many different ways that I never thought possible in your own backyard, and it's there just if you look. Next slide, please. And these are some of the different ways you can reach out to the organization to see what's coming up. If you feel like you're not really ready to commit to being a volunteer, or you can link into Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or the SchuylkillRiver.org site and sign up for volunteering. That would be great. If you can't commit to the time for volunteering, like a trail ambassador, maybe you'd be interested in signing up for volunteering in other ways. Again, there's no police coming after you if you don't volunteer. You sign up, but you don't have the opportunity to volunteer because there's schedules and conflict with schedules. But you get to see all the different activities that are going on. And last but not least, you can go out on the website and you can sign up just for the newsletter, which comes out about twice a month, and you see all the interesting activities that are coming out via email, and things that you can sign up for, again, as a volunteer, or just to come out and enjoy, like Heritage Hops or the film festival that was postponed to October because of COVID, and so on. So a wealth of opportunities to enjoy nature, to have an adventure in our backyard, all through under the wonderful tutelage and guidance and stewardship of the Greenways Association. And with that, next slide. Thank you. Any questions or?
I've got a question. It's Megan.
Yeah, hi, Megan.
Hey, so as a trail ambassador, are you responsible for like a certain section of the trail? And if so, how big of a section of the trail?
No, like I typically ride, I'm typically on a particular section of the trail because it's close to home, but I can ride any part of the trail, and that can be quote unquote credited towards my hours on the trail every month. I can go down to Philadelphia. I can ride on the Kelly Drive section of the trail. I can ride in Phoenixville. I can ride in Valley Forge. And there's different sections of the trail where when you report your time, and you do report your time typically on a monthly basis. I report my time every time I'm on the trail, but you can do it in a variety of ways. And they keep track of how many trail ambassador hours are on each section of the trail. And that helps them determine how much visibility they have on each section of the trail. And are there any blind spots on the trail? Because there's nobody out there on a particular section. But you can ride any stretch of the trail that you want and be credited towards that. You're not assigned a specific section that you have to go up and down every day. There's no need to do that.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that was really informative. Thanks, John.
John, any like most memorable moments or experiences helping people on the trail?
Well, I was thinking probably the most interesting person I met on the trail, and I've met this person twice, only in passing. I never talked to her. I've never stopped to say hi, and she's never stopped to say hi because she was flying by me. I was on my bike one time, I was running another time, and when I was running, I heard this noise behind me, and she of course said, on your left, as they typically do, and she came screaming by me at what I thought was a phenomenal rate of speed. Only she was on a mountain bike, but why she was going so fast was she had two dogs on two leashes that were pulling her along. mushing dogs in the Iditarod, but she was exercising her dogs by then pulling her on her bike, and I thought that was pretty cool. And
Sounds scary to me.
both times she was really close to the Merlatten Village trailhead, but she was going west on the trail both times.
It's amazing the diversity of people that you see on the trail these days.
Yep, baby carriages, wagons.
Especially right now with the pandemic, it's getting much more use than it probably ever has right now.
Yeah, and it just goes to show you how valuable of an asset it is to people. I mean, so you live in a rural area of Berks County, or you live in a rural area, Montgomery or Chester County. You might not think of it too much, but there are many people that are inside cities which they don't have a balcony. They're on the 13th floor of an apartment building complex, and the ability to get out and to take a walk. And again, you get next to the river, and your whole outlook on the area changes, because you can see all sorts of wildlife and enjoy nature at its finest. It's just amazing. And people are flocking to the trail area now. It's great. It's great to see.
Yeah, thanks for telling us more about it, John. The most common way that
did I miss anything?
No, I don't think so. The most common way we get ambassadors is really through word of mouth, through other ambassadors telling their story, talking to other people. And I actually already got an email saying somebody wants to be an ambassador, so good job. And I just want to say so I said in the chat that our trail ambassador hours are reported to the federal government, but really all of our volunteer hours are reported to both the state and federal government to help secure our funding. It shows, that there's interest in the community. People are willing to give their time, which is a really valuable resource. And we're lucky enough to have increased volunteer time year to year, which shows our ever-growing popularity.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Any volunteer hour you give really helps us in many different ways.
And you'll never regret being a volunteer with the Greenways. They're a great organization.
Thanks, John.
Doing wonderful work for the community, doing wonderful work for the river, doing wonderful work for the trail. Everything that we love, that we as a group, that Take It Outdoors Adventure uses on a typical summer week, several times a week. We're being able to enjoy it because of the stewardship and the care that they take for the river, the trail, and for the watershed in general.